Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. Today, we're not really doing literary criticism. They're
No.
talking about reality. We are taking a really hard look at René Guénon's analysis of Dante Alighieri.
Specifically, his work, L'Esoterisme de Dante.
Right. And the mission for this whole deep dive is to explore the idea that the Divine Comedy isn't just a poem. It's not just required reading about historical figures in hell.
It's a coded map, a map of metaphysical reality, a guide to the nature of God, and, well, a manual for the journey of the human soul.
Exactly. We're going to explore this idea that Dante wasn't just writing fiction. He was, in a way, documenting the actual architecture of the universe.
And that's a complete inversion of how we usually look at literature. I mean, modern readers, and especially from a secular or atheistic worldview, they see Dante's work as a brilliant invention.
A cultural artifact.
Right, a fantasy from a medieval mind. But Guénon argues Dante wasn't inventing anything. He was transcribing. He's suggesting that the cosmos actually is structured this way.
And that Dante was an initiate. He had the keys to read that structure.
That distinction is just, it's vital. It shifts the genre from, fantasy to nonfiction, or maybe
Technical manual.
a technical manual, yes.
Yeah.
It implies there's an objective spiritual physics that exists whether you believe in it or not.
Which is such a profound idea. And before we really start decoding that manual, and we're going to get into the Templars, the math, the hidden orders, if you like my channel, please subscribe and press the like button.
It really does help us keep digging into these huge topics.
It does. And
Mm.
digging is the right word, because Dante himself tells us to dig. There's that famous passage in the Inferno where he just breaks the fourth wall.
Oh yeah, he speaks directly to the reader.
He says, "O you who have healthy intellects, look at the doctrine which hides itself beneath the veil of strange verses."
The veil of strange verses. I mean, he's flat out admitting it. The surface story, the monsters, the fire, the famous people he beats.
It's all just a cover.
It's a cover. And Guénon breaks this down using the medieval concept of the 4 levels of reading a text.
Most of us learned the first 3 in school, right? The literal, the
philosophical or allegorical, and the political or social. But Guénon, he just discards those. He focuses entirely on the 4th level.
the initiatic, the metaphysical.
And that's where the controversy really kicks in.
Right, because historically you had critics like Eugene Arrou who saw these hidden messages and basically called Dante a heretic.
They thought he was writing in code to subvert the church.
But Guénon takes a completely different view, doesn't he?
He does. He says Arrou confused heresy with esotericism. A heretic is someone who opposes the dogma. An initiate is someone who understands the deeper truth behind the dogma.
So it's not anti-religion, it's post-religion.
Or maybe pre-religion. Guénon's whole argument here is about the difference between religion and metaphysics. Religion is the outer form. It varies by culture. It has rituals, social structures.
Or metaphysics.
Metaphysics is the universal, formless truth of God that underpins all of them.
Which is a fascinating challenge to the modern atheist argument. The critique that since there are so many religions and they all disagree, none of them can be true.
Exactly. Guénon is saying that the wise, or the initiates of these traditions, they weren't disagreeing at all.
They're just looking at the same mountain from different valleys.
Precisely, the same primordial truth. That's why Dante, a devout Christian, can have Virgil, a pagan, be his guide. He isn't contradicting his faith. He's acknowledging that wisdom is universal. It transcends the specific form of Christianity.
And Guénon says he wasn't working alone. He presents some pretty compelling evidence that Dante was part of a specific group, the Fae Santa.
The Holy Faith. And this wasn't some book club.
No, this was a third order of the Knights Templar.
That's the connection. A third order, or tertiary, means lay people. People who aren't, full-time monks or knights in a fortress, but they're affiliated with the spiritual lineage of the order.
So they share the knowledge without wearing the uniform in public.
Exactly. And Guénon points to a medal of Dante that has the letters FSKIPFT on it.
Which is quite a mouthful.
It is, but the interpretation links Dante to the rank of Fide Sancte Kadosh. And that word, Kadosh.
That's Hebrew, right? For holy or consecrated.
Yes. It's a term that still appears in high-level Masonic degrees today. The very fact that Dante, a Christian, is linked with a Hebrew term inside a Christian order that signals the universalism we were just talking about.
And once you start looking, the Templar fingerprints are just all over the poem.
Hmm.
In Paradiso, Dante talks about a convent of white stoles.
The specific uniform of the Templars.
And even more specific, there's the ladder. In the heaven of Saturn, he sees this mysterious golden ladder.
And you might just think, oh, Jacob's ladder. But Guénon connects this directly to the Kadosh ladder from Templar and Masonic symbolism. It's the path of reintegration with the divine.
This idea of reintegration brings up another group, the Rosicrucians. People love to throw that name around.
They do. It sounds very mysterious. But Guénon is very precise here. He says they weren't a society you could, join like a club. It was a state of being.
A spiritual degree.
A spiritual degree or a lineage, exactly. The symbols of the rose, which is the perfected soul, and the cross, the realized human, they appear all through the comedy. And this ties into Dante's obsession with the Holy Roman Empire.
Which, I'll be honest, is the part that usually bores people in school. It just seems like politics.
But for Dante, the empire wasn't just politics. It was a spiritual necessity. It was the form of order. Just as the church was the spiritual authority, the empire was the temporal order.
As above, so below.
Exactly, the Hermetic maxim. If the heavens are ordered and hierarchical, then earth has to be too. So for Dante, chaos in politics isn't just inefficient.
It's anti-spiritual. It actively separates us from the divine pattern.
Yes. And speaking of divine patterns found across different cultures, we have to talk about the Islamic connection.
This might be the strongest argument Guénon makes against the idea that religions are just exclusive, separate inventions.
It's based on the work of Miguel Assin Palacios, who compared Dante to the great Sufi mystic Ibn Arabi.
Ibn Arabi wrote about the Isra and Miraj.
The night journey of the Prophet Muhammad. And the parallels between his account and Dante's Divine Comedy are not just similar, they are structural matches.
Let's list a few of them because it's pretty staggering. First, the architecture of hell.
Both describe hell as a gigantic funnel, a cone descending to the center of the earth.
Okay, then you have the guides.
The angel Gabriel guides Muhammad, Virgil guides Dante, and in both stories, they're blocked by demons and need divine intervention to pass.
The purification rituals.
Both travelers have to wash in 3 distinct rivers before they can ascend to paradise.
And then the structure of heaven itself.
Both ascend through the 9 celestial spheres, and I think this is the most striking part, the final vision of God.
The beatific vision.
Both Ibn Arabi and Dante describe God not as an old man on a throne, but as an intense point of light surrounded by 9 concentric circles of angels.
A modern skeptic would just shout, plagiarism.
Mm-hmm.
They'd say Dante just copied a story that was popular at the time.
And Guénon would say that misses the entire metaphysical point. He acknowledges Dante probably knew of the Islamic texts.
Likely through the Templars. They spent decades in the Middle East interacting with Sufi orders.
Right. But for Guénon, this wasn't literary theft. It was a confirmation of reality. If a Christian initiate in Italy and a Sufi initiate in Spain both map the spiritual world,
And they come back with the exact same map.
it suggests the geography is real.
That is the key takeaway. It suggests an objective, spiritual reality. It's like 2 astronomers on opposite sides of the world discovering the same planet. They describe it the same way
Yeah.
because it's actually there.
And that really strikes a blow against the atheistic view that these are just hallucinations or, cultural projections. If they were just projections, they'd look different. The fact that they align suggests the initiates of both traditions were accessing the same data.
And a lot of that data is encoded in numbers. We can't talk about Dante without the math. It's so precise.
Incredibly precise. Everyone knows about the number 3 for the Trinity and 9 for Beatrice, but the number 11, that seems to hold a very specific, almost dangerous significance.
Why 11?
Well, arithmetically, it's everywhere. The stanzas are mostly 33 syllables, which is 3 times 11. But Guénon suggests Dante used the number 11 as a kind of recognition signal for the Fede Santa, for the Templars.
A secret handshake.
In a way. Symbolically, 11 is often the number of transgression, because it goes one step beyond the perfection of 10. But for initiates, it represented a different kind of power. And Guénon has this theory that Dante actually edited the Inferno to obscure the number 11 after the year 1307.
The year the Templars were arrested and burned.
Exactly. So before the persecution, the code might have been more obvious, but after the order was destroyed, using their signal became a death sentence. The poem became a vault, preserving the knowledge but hiding the keys.
We see a similar numerical war with the prophecies, right? The number of the beast, 666, versus Dante's number, 515.
This is classic Guénon, his sacred science. So 666 is the number of the beast, but Guénon defines the beast very specifically as materialism.
Not a literal monster.
No. It's quantity without quality. It represents the profane world, a world stripped of the sacred, trapped in just time and matter. I mean, that sounds an awful lot like the modern secular state, doesn't it?
It does. A world where only what you can measure actually counts.
And Dante opposes this with 515. He calls it the messenger of God, the Veltro or greyhound who will kill the beast. If you write 515 in Roman numerals DXV and you rearrange them.
You get DVX,
Yeah.
Dux Leader.
Right. But Guion also points out you can derive LUX from the values, lux.
Light. So the antidote to 666, to the crushing weight of materialism, is light.
Light and levity.
Ugh.
Which brings us to the physics of the center of the earth. For me, this is the most profound part of Guénon's analysis, especially for sin and atheism.
The location of Satan.
Mm.
He's not ruling some fiery kingdom. He's frozen solid in a block of ice at the exact center of the planet.
And you have to ask, why the center? In the physics Dante was using, Aristotelian physics, the center of the earth is the point where all gravity converges. It is the point of maximum weight.
In the Hindu terms Guénon uses, this is tamas.
Pure inertia, darkness, compression.
So sin isn't just being bad, it literally has weight. It's a spiritual gravity.
Exactly. Sin is the tendency to sink into matter. It's the pull of the ego, the physical world. And Satan, as the ultimate center, is the ultimate prisoner of gravity. He's crushed by the weight of the entire world, frozen at the point furthest from God.
God is the circumference, the light, infinite expansion. Satan is the center, the contraction, a black hole.
That paints atheism or materialism in a terrifying light. It isn't freedom from God. It's being stuck in the gravity well.
Absolute restriction. And the only way out is this great work, this alchemical transformation.
Yeah.
When Dante and Virgil get to Satan, they don't climb up to escape.
No, they climb down his fur until they pass his hip, the exact center of gravity. And at that point, they have to perform a literal 180-degree turn.
They flip upside down.
And in that instant, everything changes. What was down is now up. They passed the 0 point. Guénon calls this conversion in the most literal sense of turning around.
It's the moment a soul realizes the material world isn't the top. It's the absolute bottom.
You have to invert your entire value system to escape the pull of Tamas. That is the flip required to go from an atheist worldview to a spiritual one. You have to realize that spirit isn't a byproduct of matter. Matter is the sediment of spirit.
Wow. And once you make that flip, you start moving through the three worlds, which Guénon links to the three gunas in Hinduism.
Right. Hell is tamas inertia, ignorance. Purgatory is rajas. That's kinetic energy, struggle, fire. It's the active process of shedding all that weight.
And paradise is sattva.
Purity, light, harmony.
So the Divine Comedy is really a description of states of being. You can be alive, walking down the street today, and be in the state of tamas.
Yeah.
You can be effectively in hell.
Most people are. I mean,
Yeah.
if you were entirely consumed by material desires, heavy with cynicism, unable to see anything beyond the physical, you are spiritually frozen in that ice.
And to get to sattva, to that paradise state, eventually you need a new guide. Virgil has to tap out.
Virgil represents human reason, logic, philosophy. And Guénon respects Virgil. Reason is noble. It can guide you out of the darkness. It can help you understand the structure of the world. But reason has a hard ceiling.
It can get you to the door, but it can't open it.
That's it, exactly. To cross the threshold into the divine, you need St. Bernard. And Dante's choice of Bernard is so specific.
He wrote the Rule of the Knights Templar.
Right, so he bridges that warrior and monk divide, action and contemplation. But metaphysically, Bernard represents intellectual intuition.
We should define that because to modern ears, intuition sounds like a flimsy hunch.
Well, in the traditionalist school, intellectual intuition is the highest form of knowledge. It's super rational. It is direct perception.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. Reason is reading a book about fire. Intuition is touching the flame.
That's a crucial distinction. Atheism and rationalism get stuck because they demand logical proof for God.
But Guénon would argue God belongs to the realm of the infinite, and logic is a tool designed for the finite. You can't use a tape measure to calculate the volume of love. St. Bernard represents that faculty of the soul that can see the divine directly, without words or logic.
And his devotion to the Virgin Mary, the Lady, is part of this. It connects back to that chivalric tradition of love as a path to God.
Yes. The Lady, the Shekinah, represents the divine presence. Bernard guides Dante to that final vision because he knows that ultimately the mind has to surrender to the heart, or rather to the eye of the heart.
So when we just step back and look at the whole picture, the codes, the Templars, the math, the physics of sin, What's the final takeaway here?
The final takeaway is that the Divine Comedy is an initiatic itinerary. Grenon is showing us that Dante left a set of instructions. He's telling us that the dark wood, where the poem begins, that feeling of confusion, depression, lack of direction, that's not the end of the story.
It's just the starting point.
It is the starting point. And the path out requires us to engage with reality, not run from it. We have to understand our chains. That's the descent into hell. We have to struggle to purify our perception. That's purgatory. And we have to open our intellectual eye to the objective truth of God. That's paradise.
Which leaves us with a really provocative thought. Guénon talks so much about the center. Satan is at the center of gravity, but God is at the center of being. In our modern world that is so decentralized, chaotic, cynical, are we brave enough to find that center within ourselves?
That is the challenge, isn't it? We are all feeling the weight of the times. The question is, do we let that weight crush us into the ice, or do we use it as the fulcrum to turn ourselves around? The map is there. Dante wrote it down. Grenon decoded it. Now it's up to us to actually walk the path.
A path worth walking. Thank you for listening to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. We'll see you on the next dive.